we have this kind of progressive way that we've been doing this. So, let's say June and the others who've attended before are very familiar. We've already talked about some topics before and we kind of build off of that. We do record the session. So hopefully for those who are attending this for the first time, you don't get lost, but we're going to pick up where we left off last time. And the topic was really around a day in the life, right? So before this, we talked about the general concepts. What is the framework, right? A lot of theoretical stuff. And we're still going to talk about some theoretical things today, but we're also going to focus on, okay, this is what the ideal is, right? This is what the theory tells you. But then, real life comes in, right? We have challenges. It's not a perfect world where you can execute everything as planned or as intended. So when you start seeing some of those challenges, how do you deal with them? And that's kind of the focus of what we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to share my screen. So hopefully this shares without a problem. And okay, sorry, is this coming through for you?
Yep, you look good.
All right. So last time, right, we focused on the sprint planning part of it, which is really when you talk about a sprint, right, we're not gonna drain this because again, we talked about this before, but it's really a time box. You're saying, it's like 4 weeks or less where you want to deliver something, right, that's shippable, that's complete, that is of high quality. And in that period, right, if you say it's 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week, whatever that looks like, it really starts with sprint planning. So last time we talked about, okay, what does that really mean, right? What is the definition? What does it look like in terms of the activities? What are some common challenges and solutions? So we talked about that. And then we also talked about backlog refinement, which is really, it's not just about a one-time planning thing. It's about continuous improvement and refinement, right? So unlike with waterfall, where it's big bang, you plan once, usually it's for everything already. Backlog refinement helps you so that you're continuously doing in-time planning and refining the requirements, refining the desirements for the product more and more versus one time, big time. It's like, okay, it's a long list of things. So we prioritize based on the top things in your backlog and you keep refining top to bottom, right? And it just becomes a cycle. And we talked about that as well. Like, hey, what does that really mean? What are the activities? What are some challenges that we've seen? And what are some solutions that we could explore for some of those challenges? And that's where we ended, right? And that's a key thing about these sessions too. One great feedback we got from June and some of the others is, hey, let's not rush through it just because, there's slides, there's like an agenda. It's about the valuable conversations and the lessons and the networking. So now we're just continuing. Like, we didn't get to finish everything in that session, so we're going to continue so that we can have some more meaningful conversations. And we're going to kick it off with daily Scrum now. We talked about sprint planning last time, right? Like, hey, it starts with your sprint planning. What are we going to complete in this sprint, right? And that sprint could be 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week. Really, in that period of time, what can you get done? What is the value you're going to deliver to your client? And then now, okay, you've had your sprint planning and you're having your daily Scrum every day of the sprint. And what does it really mean, right? It's 15 minutes, it's time box. It should just be 15 minutes as much as possible. You're keeping it in that time box, right? And the developers, right, talk about, this is our progress. We're synchronizing our activities, right? Really trying to make sure that we're on the same page. And we're replanning too. Like, hey, if our plan for today and for tomorrow, it doesn't make sense anymore based on the reality of yesterday, then we have to adjust, right? It's about real-time adjustment, inspecting and adapting. So in that 15 minutes, everybody kind of says the old school way of doing it, which is still valuable, right? Say you start with 3 basic questions. You say, okay, what did you do yesterday to help with the sprint goal, right? If say our goal in the sprint is we need to develop, we need to provide, right, a holistic accounts experience in this sprint to our customers. That might be your sprint goal. So you say, okay, what did I do yesterday to help with that sprint goal? Maybe I coded this, maybe I tested this, etc. So we talk about that quickly. And then what am I going to do today, right? I'm going to continue with this, or I'm going to start doing this. And then do you have any impediments, anything that's in your way, right? So you talk about that. Start with those 3 basic questions to get it going, right? And so, yeah, you inspect your progress, you understand, are we trending, right, towards completing it in 2 weeks? If your sprint is 2 weeks, in your daily Scrum, you're going to see in that 15 minutes, right, quickly, okay, are we progressing the way we need to progress within 10 working days to get to the finish line? And if we're not, right, what do we need to adjust, right? What do we need to adapt to make sure that we get to deliver value to the client by the end of sprint? We want quick decision making. We want everybody to be on the same page, and it's 15 minutes. I know some people think, oh, why do we need to do this every day? Well, it's 15 minutes. And in that 15 minutes, there's a lot of value because you're all on the same page. You're getting to collaborate. You're getting to understand what everybody else is working on and maybe how you can support each other. Or it can be like, oh, I'm Mica, right? And then maybe Becca is working on a module that is dependent on mine and I'm holding her up. So what can we do to kind of reshuffle the work? Or maybe do I help her first? Or vice versa. So that kind of thinking happens in those 15 minutes. I'd say, yeah, you know what? Okay, let's talk about this after the fact. Let's collaborate, right? Let's collaborate and say, what can we do to help you so that we get to the overall goal by the end? Now, what are the challenges? And you guys can pipe in, by the way, anytime to share your own experiences. And I'm going to have Becca and Kalyani, you can speak to some of these, right? So maybe Becca, you can start with some of the challenges that you've seen yourself from experience.
Yeah, definitely. So I've been in many a project that has claimed to be agile, that in actuality is just not agile at all. So I've seen many challenges in terms of daily Scrum. I've been in so many, and I think all of these challenges resonated hit a little too close to home for me. So I think the first one is really huge, which is keeping the meeting to 15 minutes. So this one, I think most daily Scrum meetings that I've been in have been in 30-minute boxes, and then they've even run longer. And so this is due to a myriad of things, but a lot of it is long discussions that only pertain to a few members. So someone came across a bug the other day and they wanted to discuss it, but instead of saying, okay, we are aware of the bug, we know the parties involved, this actually does need to be a meeting, but outside of this, so everyone else can talk about it, it just goes on and on. And that's a huge deal. And that also bleeds into loss of focus, where you lose focus of what the actual goal of the meeting is, which is to make sure that everyone's able to surface what they've done, what they're working on, if they have any blockers, and you're going down this winding road of just one issue, or you're talking about one deliverable, one small task. So losing track of that primary objective is a really big thing and very real. And then I guess the second one would be, people not sharing blockers. Sometimes, depending on the environment, I've seen that people feel very uncomfortable. If it doesn't feel, if there's more of a hostile finger pointing environment, people will feel a little less likely to say, oh, actually, I do have a bug, or something came up and I wasn't able to complete this. In a weird way, it's almost like you have to make a safe space during these daily Scrum meetings so that people feel comfortable raising these issues, because a lot of people feel much more comfortable sweeping it under the rug versus being able to actually say what's going on. And whether they sweep it under the rug or not, like the reality is that it's happened, right? The bug exists. It's much better to surface it. So making people feel comfortable to share is, I think, a really big deal. I don't see it as much as, losing track of the meeting minutes, right? And it goes on for 30 minutes to 40 minutes talking about whatever the issue may be, but that is a big deal. And then all of a sudden at the end of the sprint, you have a whole bunch of issues that no one brought up. So making sure that people feel comfortable is huge. And lastly, reporting to the facilitator rather than to the team members themselves, because most of the time when these daily Scrum meetings are run, as everyone, or as most people know, right, the facilitator is the one running these meetings. And so you're asking questions saying, what did you do yesterday? Do you have any blockers? And they're just responding solely to you as the facilitator rather than to their teammates. And a lot of times with these blockers, other teammates would help them resolve these blockers, or they have a bug that another team member would be able to help resolve. So talking to the team and making it feel like a team environment is really important, rather than you're reporting to me, I'm the facilitator, tell me your progress. It's you report to the team, because as a team, we are delivering this product for this sprint. So talking, and also please feel free to, I feel like I'm going on and on. If anyone has some comments or anything to say, please feel free.
I have a teeny comment.
Sure.
So what I wanted to do is combine two things you said. One is that sometimes people are reluctant to talk about something, along with losing track of your agenda. So just taking the example of my personal life, a lot of times I'll lose track of the agenda because I don't like the topic on the table. And so one of the things you can do as a facilitator is figure out exactly why the conversation is going off track. And it may have to do with a reluctance that needs to be exposed. And it's really, really hard to be the person running the meeting. So, but I know for a lot of this stuff, they say, take a look at your personal life and how you run your personal life, apply it to your personal life and see what happens. And then you just take that up into the meeting level and you go, oh yeah, I do that too.
It's great sharing, June. And that's one of the things I love about June's sharing. So she always has a great way of kind of framing it through an analogy or a metaphor or a simile, and then just being able to relate it in a very eloquent manner. So appreciate that, June.
Hey, you
Yeah,
have your hand
We
raised?
go
have
ahead.
two-
There are other folks. Sorry,
Yeah,
go ahead.
We have two hands raised, Mica. I
Mhm.
want to make sure you saw Syjuco and then
Okay,
Kai.
please go ahead. Please go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hi, yeah. So I know this was a discussion that took place previously. So I obviously want to be conscious of everyone's time and not take too much of it. My question was related to the techniques that you would use during sprint planning for estimation, right? So t-shirt size is obvious approach, but I was really interested in identifying the cost, right? So I focus a lot on release planning, right? And we do use Agile methodology, Agile framework. And so I don't necessarily use the t-shirt size because for release, I feel like it's not the most accurate approach, but I was interested in finding out what others are doing.
So yeah, you're right. It isn't the focus of the session, but it's a great question. And the best part is in the last maybe 5 minutes of the session, we do have a Mentimeter. Like we want you to input your questions, like what do you want the next topic to be? So let's say that could be a great suggestion, Saskia, for deep dive on estimation techniques. Like there's t-shirt sizes, there's Fibonacci sequence in terms of relative estimation, right? And using planning poker for relative estimation, and yeah, there's hours, right? So what would that look like, and what might be the different ways it would make sense? So in the Agile world, right, there's no prescribed method. Like there's even a no estimation movement, right? And which we're not going to rat hole into, but really it's up to us to decide what is fit for purpose, what's going to get us to our goal of really understanding, and helping make it good for the team, right? So we can make that one of the topics for the future. But yeah, let's include that in the feedback. That's a good.
And to quickly add on to that, right? When you're talking about estimation techniques here, usually it is the developer's perspective, right? So the dollar don't come into play here. It is about like, how much are you thinking the work is going to be? Is it like, 3 days, 5 days? So that is where like mostly we use t-shirt size to estimate.
Yeah, and me responding in the chat, I'm a little biased because I love estimating via complexity, because I think that every developer is a little different, right? So the amount of work that a senior developer could get done in 5 hours is very different than the amount of work that a junior developer could get done in 5 hours. So I lean a little more towards that. So I gave a bit more of a biased answer in the chat, but there are very big pros and cons to estimating in every way that Mica just mentioned. But I think that's a good topic because it seems like it's a pretty hot topic in the chat.
Yeah.
One quick thing I want to add is like in our organization, we are planning to stop again. Not everybody is into it right now. We did not agree to it, but our digital lead actually bringing up saying that we'll not go with t-shirt size or Fibonacci or any kind of estimations, but we'll go with like lead time and lag time, which they're bringing into flow metrics into the space.
There's
and
that too.
I am new to this. I was more into like t-shirt size and the Fibonacci and all that. So this is new to me. Just wanted to bring to the notice of the audiences here too that something else is coming up.
But Susmita, like lead time and lag time, if you use it, it's going to be like dependency, right?
I agree, and that is what I'm trying to tell the organization, that it's a leadership agreement that you guys want us to gauge the velocity in terms of the team performance and whatnot. Maybe not like finger pointing, but to assess where they stand and what help they need. Versus lead time, lag time doesn't give me that that level of detail. So we are still in conversations, but I did not know like if it is an industry standards that companies or organizations are moving towards. But just so that it came to, I wanted to share a little bit of information that I had.
Awesome. Yeah, and again, we'll put a pin on this. We'll go back to it. We'll park it for another session. But I guess in closing, I will say that, even let's say I'm a big fan of lead time and cycle time. They have their purpose, right? But again, it's how you use it. So let's say these different concepts, be it estimation or historical data, and how that might feed into some of your estimation. Let's say lead time and cycle time, right? They're actually historical performance, right? They're based out of how long did it really take you to start the work for cycle time until you completed it, as an example. And then that can give you an idea how much work the team can really do in a certain period of time. So it can help. It has its purposes, but again, we have to use it right? So I think that's part of the conversation. It's going to be a good conversation. Sorry, Kai, your turn.
I think this is great. A lot of this is very challenging as new Agile teams form. Estimation is always the toughest, it's very biased. So therefore, we have to look at, again, what's the purpose and the value of why we estimate. And if we do use estimation, whether you use t-shirt sizing, story points, you really let the team as a coach to use more the modified Fibonacci sequence. So that therefore, you have an understanding of the effort of the work, including the various factors, the complexity as well. Because without estimating, it's really hard for your product owner to plan and forecast the team as well. And also budgeting, when you roll it up to the portfolio level, at the program portfolio, you need to understand the cost associated with the story. The story costs 5 points. You're taking consideration this estimation is across the testers and developer providing their input into the estimation, how much this story costs us, how much this feature costs us, because the feature, all the story points going to roll up to the feature.
Roll up to your feature, yeah.
Yeah, and then the product owner or business owner can say, if you want this feature, stakeholder or customer, is going to cost you this much, it's going to take you this long. The teams are doing 20 points per sprint. If you want this feature, which is 25 points total rolled up, it's going to take us over 1 sprint. So we have to be able to provide some type of predictability. Without estimation, we can't really predict. And that's a lot of challenges the product owner have. They don't know what to tell the customer. When could we have this? So I think Mica and the rest of the panel, I think this would be a great additional workshop to really dive and understand how to properly estimate, so that way it helps and add value to the organization.
Absolutely.
And like to your point, right? It is always going to be challenging, and I'm in this role, and I continuously get that question from the client. Okay, when are you going to deliver this? And with the developers, right? Like you have the challenge; they cannot estimate because they don't know how what all is involved with the feature. And then this is again going back and forth, right? Like because you can't go into the waterfall where you are defining everything from the start to the beginning, and then you are defining this many hours, this much cost. In Agile, it is like continuous improvement. We deliver, we give, and then we take the feedback and improvise on that. So that difference comes in, and yeah, it's always a challenge to get like the exact estimation done. That's my experience actually.
Right, absolutely, Kiani. And again, I know we went, but I think it's really an interesting topic. So maybe again, the last word on this is, the session on estimation, we'll talk about the techniques, right? What are the different ways you could estimate, right? Where it might make sense. And also just remember, it's a forecast. I mean, Kai used the term as well. I think that sometimes leaders who are new to the world of agility, they don't understand that forecasts, like same with weather, right? We have these high-tech tools, we have all these factors, we have these bright minds, but at the end of the day, as great as a forecast might be, it's still, it rains when it wasn't supposed to rain, right? It's a forecast for a reason. So they have to also get that mindset change. So we'll talk about estimation, certainly. Great topic. I think that's going to be a great topic for next time. Now, going back to this, right? Just to wrap up the daily Scrum as a challenge, and people can share their own experiences or their own thoughts, like just unmute yourselves. One thing I will share is it does help, right? Just make sure that the time box, your facilitator doesn't have to be the Scrum Master each and every time, right? But usually it is your Scrum Master, because that Scrum Master will have the facilitation techniques to keep it in the time box, right? To make sure we're meeting the objective. And one thing that I will share is, the tools can help too, right? And sorry, let me, I think my window closed. There we go. And then let me minimize this so it's not blocking. So this is, again, Azure DevOps. We're a Microsoft shop, so I'm not trying to sell you Azure DevOps. I'm just sharing what I know, right? And this is a tool where, hey, you have your cards, right? Say in real world, right? And when face-to-face contact, this would be like your Post-its that you can drag right to the different columns. So this is a helpful way to visualize, especially with the COVID world and still a remote world, distributed teams, right? To kind of visualize, right, what that work might be and how you talk about it during your daily scrum. So just be aware that there are tools like this available. And again, it doesn't have to be Azure DevOps, but certainly from my experience, I do use this very often. There are tools available to help with some of that, and to make sure that you are meeting your objectives for your daily scrum, and that we have that transparency. We're all looking at the same thing. We have our one source of truth, and everybody understands that when I say, this is the progress, right? This is done. It's also reflected in the tool. And again, we're just singing off of the same hymn sheet. Okay, just wanted to do that quick sharing. And again, that's also another future topic we can talk about if you guys are interested about tooling in Agile. So we go now to sprint review, right? So like when you're done, right, you're doing the work, you're developing that value for your customer, you're collaborating, the progress, your challenges, synchronizing, meeting the goals. Now at the end of the sprint, right? Again, it's a 2-week sprint, and I use that as an example because that's the most usual duration of a sprint in the industry. That you don't have to use that, but it's the most common one. Then you say, okay, at the end of 2 weeks, here's the sprint review, right? We want to inspect the outcome, right? Again, inspect and adapt. A lot of that, the time, that's really what we're after. We want to inspect the product, we want to inspect the progress, then we want to adapt, right? So look, this is what we came up with, right? Let's say if again that your sprint goal was to provide a holistic accounts experience, right? If it's like an online shopping application, for example, an online shopping experience. So part of that you're delivering in a sprint is the accounts. Then okay, here, this is what it looks like. This is how you create an account. This is how you edit it. This is how, whatever, right? So you are showing the actual product. You're not going through slides, right? And I think that is part of the challenge. And I think, Kalyani, you have some great examples around this, which I'd love to hear about, and anybody else as well, right? I think that the bottom line is this is about feedback. This is about demonstrating, and not just for a demo for, applause, right? That's great. Applause is great. But it's about really, okay, what do you think, right? What can we improve? Did we deliver the value you were expecting, and how can we adjust for the future? So Kalyani, yeah, I remember you talked about some experiences around this. Feel free to share.
Right. Yeah. So for the sprint review, like normally the challenges we have seen is people focus on giving like just a PowerPoint presentation of what they just do, instead of like, adding it, like what value it deliver, right? It shouldn't be like just the tasks that are in the sprint planning or like in the backlog that you have accomplished, but more than like, what's the value that you are delivering it to the client, the customer. And that should be like, the perspective of the sprint review. The other challenge is when the team is just focused on getting their tasks done, like, you are losing the focus on the actual deliver value. So by having that collaboration with stakeholders and the product team, the team has to make sure that the focus is on the value, the end product, the where we are aligning to the vision, instead of just again, like, focusing on the tasks there. The solutions, right? Like, capture the feedback and having those conversations focused on towards the end product value, rather than just like, one item task. So as a building a cohesive product, building a cohesive team where you are adding value, that has to be the focus, the prime motto of like, giving the sprint review, rather than just going through a checklist of items.
Right. Thanks, Cleone. And I've seen it personally where it's like death by PowerPoint, like, oh, these are the things we worked on. Here's the status. And I'm like, okay, but that's not, again, that is not the objective. The objective is to see the actual product or increment, at least that part of the product that you developed for that sprint and getting that feedbacks. And then that's the most powerful thing, even allowing them to play around with it if needed, right? So thanks a lot for that, Cleone. Oh, Sasika, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I had a quick question. So,
Sure.
The teams that I've been with, we've never really done any sprint reviews. I wasn't sure how beneficial that is if the client is, as well as the product owner, is involved in testing, in validating the product.
So, Sashika, I think you are talking about the MVP.
Product.
No.
Okay, so there's a couple of things, right? So typically you have your product owner, your scrum master, and the developers, right? Those are the three key roles, at least in Scrum, and usually other teams have some variation of that, but those are usually the key roles. Your product owner is from the client organization typically, and you're collaborating closely. Yes, you're right. But you're presenting to the stakeholders who are not your product owner, right? They're from the client organization. They're also stakeholders, but they're not the product owner themselves, right? So they want to see too, like, let's say if you have the executives of an organization, right? They're not your product owner. Like, you have just one product owner working with you and collaborating with you. So these other people have a stake too. That's why they're the stakeholders. They want to see, hey, I'm gonna use this product, or this product is for my clients. I gave you that budget, for example. I gave you $1 million for this. What am I really getting, right? So those are the people you're demoing to, not the product owner. In fact, but this is a great point actually, because sometimes people make that mistake. They think, oh, I'm demonstrating to the product owner during sprint review, but you're not, because your product owner is supposed to be collaborating with you each and every day, right? Every step of the way during your sprint. But who you're really demonstrating to and getting the feedback from would be their stakeholders, right? The other stakeholders, not the product owner. I hope that helped.
Sure. So the executive team, they are not interested in seeing the progress, the product progress. I'm in the financial service space, right? So they don't get involved in like the minutia. They want to know at a high level how the initiative is doing. So I guess maybe perhaps that's the reason why we don't do demos. But okay, thank you.
Sure. And I get it. That might be another topic for another day, but there's different reasons that people behave certain ways, but it's also maybe the stakeholders, right? Stakeholders, you have to be clear about who your stakeholders are. Sometimes maybe they're just really not stakeholders. That's why they're not interested. But then if you're not getting the right stakeholders, right, you're wasting people's time if it's not the right people and they're attending those sprint reviews. At the same time, you're not getting the value from actually doing the sprint reviews if you're not getting the right people in there, because you're just talking to the product owner maybe, and you've already talked to the product owner. Your product owner already knows what's happening, right? So why not get more stakeholders? But yeah, that is a good point. I think it's also a matter of making sure you get the right people in that room so that it becomes a productive and meaningful session. Yeah. So sorry.
And also, I'm sorry.
Sorry, who was that?
So this.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. I saw Kai raised a hand, so we can have her later.
Yeah, so no, what I was going to say was that some of the business stakeholders that actually contributed to defining the requirements, they participate in the testing, in the validation effort as well. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I mean, and that's a good thing, right? But again, not all of them are going to be part of the testing effort. So it's a matter of making, right?
Yeah, so the people who are very hands-on, they participate in the testing. Then their senior management, they're not really involved, hands-on. They are kind of decision makers, and they're not interested in playing with it, or even seeing what the end product was. They want to know that it works.
So I think we are getting
very close to time.
No, not to the close of the time that I meant, like, actually. So the purpose of sprint review is like those 2 weeks cycle that we are talking about. But I think everyone is looking at like the end product, right? Like when Cisco is talking, like, what's the end result, or like, the overall feature. So in sprint review, like if it is 2 weeks, you are not getting the entire thing done, right? It could be a part of your feature or an enhancements that they are talking about. Maybe that's the difference.
No. So let me clarify then. So we do have 2 week sprints, and there would be obviously increments are being built,
Mhm.
and at the end of, let's say, the fifth or the let's say 2, 4, 6, 8th week, there would be a bunch of features that are actually delivered at the end of that, right? So it's just increments, because this is in regards to release planning and release implementation activities. So even so there would be testing that gets done within after each 2 week sprints, and then there is a end-to-end test that's done after the 4th sprint. Okay, that's when we actually go live. We don't go live after the 2 week sprint, right? There is something of significance that's being built, and then that's then get pushed to production. But within the entire cycle, there isn't, like, we don't really do sprint reviews in terms of demoing the sprint, demoing what's been built, but there would be a review of where we are with the implementation. I don't want to take up too much
I think
time.
hey,
Yeah.
sorry, Sasika, you broke up for me, so I apologize if I spoke over you. I think we might be rat holing, but there's a purpose to a sprint review, and there might be some scenarios. Let's say in your case, I don't know, maybe you don't see the value of it, but quite frankly, I mean, I think this is a default event in, let's say, in Scrum, and even let's say SAFe, Scaled Agile Framework, right? There is still the concept of having these kinds of reviews at the end of every iteration. So there's value, and I think we might just need to dissect it a little bit more. I just worry about rat holing in terms of there might be other things that are of interest and other people who might have questions. But I mean, I see what you're coming from, and I see what you're saying, but I think it might just be a matter of trying to understand why you guys don't see the value to the sprint review, or how maybe it can evolve into a true inspect and adapt event that right, for you guys, that where it makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I certainly, especially from financial services, I do work with some clients in financial services. Agile, like usually isn't as straightforward in terms of fitting it into the financial services world, if that makes sense. And I don't know if you're also experiencing that, Sasika, but that's what I've seen, right, personally with some of my FS clients. But
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely like to get into actually focus on doing demos, but I mean, time is of essence, so I've kind of put off bringing that to the surface, right? So yeah, I mean, maybe we can have an offline conversation about that.
Yeah, let's and again, FS is a bit of a special one, so
Thank you.
okay, cool.
Do you have a question, Kai?
Kai, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add to, I think this is great discussion. In regards to the sprint review slash demo, what I've seen work well when working with multiple teams is just, looking at, even as you start your sprint, when you're doing sprint planning, you already know what features and the stories that's related to whatever feature we're working on. You already know the stakeholders that's involved. So therefore, when you start your sprint planning, and once you complete it, you should invite key stakeholders that have stake into that sprint to attend, so that way they have have more time to schedule it in. And in addition, during for the demo, you shouldn't wait until the very end of the sprint to do demo and get feedback. It should be, I think, Mica, you had mentioned, continuously, as we call them the 3 Migos. As soon as a story gets developed and tested, you have the product owner will sit with the team, the development tester that's working on that story, and just say, it met my acceptance. They're demoing that in the development environment, and say, that looks good. So therefore, you're building quality into the product early by vetting it early before even it gets pushed into the QA environment for QA to do the verification. It's not tossing over the wall and say, hey, QA, that's your problem now. You test in the test environment. So therefore, along the way, those stories should be, as they get completed, it gets demoed, well, a mini demo with the product owner, the development tester, make sure it meets those acceptance criteria, the user story. So by the time you get to the demo, the sprint review / demo at the end, you're confident, 99%, almost 100% confident that whatever you're going to be demonstrating, it meets the product owner's acceptance, and the product owner truly is representing your stakeholders. And if the stakeholder cannot attend, but at least every 2 weeks, you are ensuring that the stories or the features you're delivering is going to meet the acceptance. And then maybe your stakeholders may not want to see that until they see end to end, until they see a solution. They don't want to see mini stories. Okay, this story, we changed the color of this box or enter a data, and it displays some type of data after we enter that. They want to see it end to end. I want to be able to go from this point to this point. I want to see my business flow working. And once you feel that you can deliver that based upon your sprint planning and forecasting, then you invite those stakeholders, because then that's going to be more meaningful to them. Their time is more better spent versus seeing increments of little stories. Until you can piece them together to deliver a feature that's going to add value, then you invite them. But
So I think that's a valuable point, Kai. In terms of, you mentioned, hey, from the beginning of sprint, just know who your stakeholders are, so that, again, it kind of goes back to also to what I was mentioning, Sasika. Or do you even have the right people in those meetings, right? So I think if you understand who might be interested to in that increment, in that piece of work, versus who you maybe should invite at a later point at another sprint where it's already a bigger, right, a bigger, more holistic view of what you're trying to deliver, then that's the point you invite those stakeholders. So I think those are great points. And I'm sorry, we are in the last 3 minutes. And again, we're not going to rush through the content. This is a lot of great conversation. So we have one more topic, the sprint retrospective. And I think that's going to open up a lot of conversation too. So we'll continue that next week. But what I want to do to make this interactive is I put a link in our chat window. So if we're just going to wrap up some of these conversations on sprint retrospective, right, next time, but that's not going to cover like a full hour. So I want you guys, if you could open that up, and I'll share my screen as well. We want to hear from you. Like, after we wrap this up, we talk about the last thing, which is the sprint retrospective. What do you guys want to talk about next, right, of interest, right? I heard estimation. It's not actually here, so you can put that in the next section. So the first section, let me know if you're seeing my screen. Hopefully you are. Sorry.
Yeah, and since these are drop downs, if you guys have like fill in the blank answers, I'm not sure if there's an option for that, but feel free to put it in the chat and we'll take note of it, because there were a lot of other topics that got surfaced today that I think we should definitely touch on, especially estimation. It seems like a huge topic.
Great point, Becca. And what I will do is actually there is, there should be a section here where, mentee. There's another section which is free text, right? I'll put this section, right? Any specific questions, right? Or topics that you want tackled or discussed that wasn't an option to be ranked. So we do have this. I will share the link with you as well. So please go ahead and just answer these so that we have it. It does, sorry about that. It does store these automatically. So we're going to get to keep it, and the team, Kalyani, Becca, and I, we're going to be able to take a look. Sorry, where's the chat window? My apologies. I don't use Zoom very often because we use Teams. So that's why I fumble a little bit with the navigation. So let me just see how I can do this. Show all of this. Where's the chat window?
And as an overview of the session for October, we're planning on doing a shared story session mixed with maybe some Agile best practices, but we wanted to talk about any discussions that you thought maybe might be relevant to the group, or if you have experience in something or really want to know advice or need advice in certain.
So here are the links.
Yeah, that this is what we wanted to get your input on. So we focused on the things that you guys wanted to hear about.
Right. And thank you so much, Becca. And again, this is a key learning here. Like, we were not rushing through content. It's a lot about it. It's a conversation, but at the same time, we need a deeper dive. We want to be able to cover that, right? So let's say estimation sounds like a hot topic. what are the other things? I heard scaling at one point, right? Somebody mentioned during the intros. I think that also might be interesting. Again, just rank it. We want to see your feedback, what's really your interest, so that we can focus on that. So next time we will wrap up on sprint retrospective, and then we'll look at the ranking, right? We'll look at your feedback, and if there's like a lot of, I think estimation might be a good candidate for the next one, then we will certainly focus on that for the next session if that's what we see in the feedback. Exactly, it is a back. Yep. Oh, June, sorting a backlog. Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah. So we're seeing some of that. So actually, let me share again. I know we're already 1 minute past. Thank you everybody for your questions, your feedback. Let me just try to share again. And my apologies if I do fumble a bit with Zoom. I use this really just for for WITI. I don't use it at all, which probably makes me an outlier in the real world.
We're in the same boat, Mica. There's such an irony of being a tech consultant and not knowing how Zoom works.
I know, right? It is very funny. So let me see what I'm seeing here. Let me know if you're sharing. And for the others who have to drop, of course, respectful of your time, you are past the time box. This it looks like, okay, there's a lot of, it's practically a tie in the ranking, right? So this is a good one. Let's see the other slide if we can get to there we go. Okay, good stuff. So yeah, and this gets stored for us. So, you know, Becca, Kalyani, and I as the leadership team, we will take a look and make sure that we're able to address these topics. So thank you, appreciate your feedback. And until next time, sorry, I know we did go a little bit over, but just so much good conversation. And thank you again for everybody's patience, your enthusiasm, and we'll talk to you again next week. I mean, not next week, next month.